an agenda since this is a BoF, but I heard some people had some input, like Nico. So Nico, if you want to start with any questions or remarks, please do.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So how can I summarize that? I work in the Qualcomm landing team, and so we want to start using OpenEmbedded, and we want to start providing support for whoever is going to be using, the Dragon boards or anything for making products or something. So we need to get images, and we need to do something to get images and use case that work on the board. So we are going to do it for the Dragon board. What I want to discuss today is how we can do it for Linaro in general. So what we do and what we are going to do is going to be leveraged for everybody else. So we want to, I don't know if what we want is a reference distro or just images, but what I wanted to start with is to define some use cases, applications, and provide images for that will work across all the boards. So one other thing I've been looking at, I've been looking at how Freescale is doing it. And so what Freescale does, how they actually deliver OpenEmbedded based or builds or something to their own customer. So they add a couple of layers and with additional softwares. I don't think they have a distro, they just use Kooi, I think, as for the reference distro. So that's something which is missing, and that's where I think we should be doing something. I don't have all the answers, but it's improving the out-of-the-box experience for somebody who starts with the Linaro or meta Linaro layers.
Right. Oh, this is a bit louder than I expected. So, right, we don't have any good and decent examples on how to assemble a layer stack and build a product on top of that. It would be nice if we, the instruction we have right now, the Jenkins script, we should make it more generic, maybe rename it and show how you can add your own layers, and then have documentation showing for all the use cases you show, like, okay, this is a starting point. You can chase this and that, and then have what you want. Because what I've heard mentioned is that some people want to have some desktop with Wayland, and our standard layer set doesn't include that. So we should probably include that and do builds for that.
Yeah, so for example, the use case I have in mind, at least, so one of them is Wayland. So basically provide, somebody who wants to try Wayland on any of the hardware that we support at Linaro, that should be easy. You should just git something and run build, and I should be able to run Wayland. Wayland is one use case, Qt5 is another one, so that's very common as well to actually need Qt5. It's difficult today. If you want to do a Qt5 image with OE core today, it's putting all the pieces together, it's not easy, so that's where we might want to show people how to do it. X desktop as well, just basic X. That's at least these 3 ones.
So, and there has also been talk about having a more general reference distro for Linaro, both on the Android, Debian/Ubuntu, and the OpenEmbedded side, that we have something Linaro branded. Personally, I think for OpenEmbedded that's a bad idea. We should just promote no distro. That is the internal name for the OE core distroless setting, and then show people how they can either add their own distro layer or how to change the things they want, instead of going all out Linaro branded, because that we have enough examples of that going wrong in the OE community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think we need a distro. We need to, and the problem I'm seeing is that people who want, there are people who want to use OpenEmbedded, but they just don't know how to do it because it's difficult just to start from the scratch.
Right.
It's easy if you just, it's easy to make an X11 desktop. Kooi that's good. But then if you go outside of that, Qt5, Wayland, and a few other things, that's where people have issues. So we should help them, right?
Yes, exactly. And we should publish full OpenEmbedded builds that aren't using hardware packs.
Oh, yes.
For example, you mentioned that for the Dragon board, you want the OE build to build everything, so you get a complete flashable image from OpenEmbedded, including all the wrapping you need for fastboot or whatever protocol is used.
Yes, But that's more like something that has to be figured out in the baseboard layer. But
Yes.
yes, I mean, not using the outdoor backup. That was an assumption that I had done.
But you have Linux layers.
Can you get
Basically, the issue that you had for a while, that you're building big generic machines and you don't include Linux kernel. I think actually lately, I saw you guys actually has Linux-AR64, which is supposed to be sort of single image supporting everything. So in some sense, actually, that Dragon board, OpenEmbedded, if you build with Linux-AR64, it should be addressed, no?
In theory, the kernel might run, but it's more you need, what is it, a special header on the kernel and a header on a device tree to work with the bootloader on the Dragon board. It's things like that we were talking about. And yes, I'd like the standard OE builds to start using the Linaro kernel as well, because we now build with Linux Dummy, but we're getting more and more use cases that need kernel headers. For example, all the UEFI verification needs kernel headers. So every time I work on the LUVOS, I have to select a real kernel to be built, which means I'm now testing two different sets of configurations.
And just, I'm not sure where you done. One of my questions that I brought up actually before, and a strong opinion that the value that Linaro can bring actually in OpenEmbedded is the testing. So in some sense, can you give update what's going on? Is there any past advances? Or in some sense, actually, I really want to maybe understand how actually testing happens actually OpenEmbedded in general. So is it like OpenEmbedded testing happens actually? I think YOCTO claim that they do actually a lot of actual testing, right? But what exactly actually they do, and kind of how it actually trickles back to OpenEmbedded that Linaro.
So the testing we tend to do is Lava, and if we have a deliverable, then we hand it over to QA for Milos, and he does all the verification, or basically his team does the verification on that. And the networking group worked on p-test support, but that had a lot of delays because anytime we get something from LNG, the review cycle takes months. So that is really, really, really slow moving. You have a review comment, and then 3 months later you might get a reply, not addressing the comment. So the p-test bit, that it's in now, but it's taken more than half a year. So I have no experience with that. Maybe we'll see it being used, but don't hold your breath on that.
Well, from LNG is a separate, right? They have very specific kind of domain-specific actual thing. I was thinking about, like, generally when I'm picking up actually even like Freescale actual experience, I worked with actually with them. If you hear actually what they do of the testing on the Freescale before actually they deliver their YOCTO-based kind of like distro.
OE-based.
Yeah, it's a, well, in their case it's YOCTO-based.
No Pocky-based.
Yeah, Pocky-based, sorry. Yeah.
And it's not YOCTO compliant.
That's fine. Yeah. But they do a lot of testing, right? And when let's say if I consider actually to build my own distro, let's say based on distroless Linaro actual thing, right? That the testing, that's the one actually that kind of big actual piece. And then I can start building my own testing, right? But that actually each member will be in the same actual situation. So in some sense I can have, let's say Bash has p-test already inside, right? So okay, and then we have option to enable p-test OpenEmbedded image. Even the script has, you can tell actually the script to go and build actually p-test to enable the image. But is it kind of like Lava running actually, for example, like Bash p-test and verifying actually passing or not failing, and this actual stuff? Is there any dashboard? And it can go on actually a lot of open source actually packages in general, right? And in some sense, maybe actually the question is, it's not even like ARM specific up to some extent, right? It's a general open source kind of question. Kind of who's maybe you know who is in OpenEmbedded testing it, or is there anyone actually is doing actually any tests there?
I don't know of anyone actually using p-testing. I know support has been added, but it's unit tests for the package/recipe involved. So you're only testing one component, which has its value, but most people prefer to test the system. You can test bash if you want, but you can also just test the output of the shell script you want to run. So if for your product you just need a shell script to run, bash unit tests aren't that important. The important thing is that your script works.
No, I have my system testing for sure, right? But the issue is that that's actually unit test versus actually system test discussion now, right? So the system test, when the bug discovered in the system test, is super expensive because actually kind of went from my kind of like Cisco router actual point of view, if I have actually bug actually somewhere actually on upper layer, to debug it actually up to, let's say, libxml2 failure, it takes actually days and days. And in some sense, actually, let's say libxml may have its own unit testing and kind of they were not actually utilized in any way. So fundamentally, I may know actually upfront actually about actually this bug. So that's what it's kind of like in some sense, actually look Fedora, right? Like when you build actually RPM now on Fedora, there is actually a section that actually they will run tests for you actually during the RPM actually build specific to this actual test. So this is actually p-test supposed to do actually an open embedded, and but there are two major problems actually. There are very few p-test enabled recipes, and the second one actually is nobody really running them.
Right. And then we, as in builds and baselines, we have no direct requirement to enable p-test.
Yeah, and when you're running it and it fails, who's going to fix it?
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem I'm struggling like since forever. We're running a test, the test fails, I'm reporting it, and then no one cares. So if you have a specific requirement and you're committed to fixing the bugs when they appear, then I'm fine doing that. But if no one's fixing them, well, it's like no go.
The situation on that has improved a bit. We have cut down a lot on the builds we do. You probably have seen it, and we went from this to this. So we're getting better at this. But for OE, we know that members are interested in it, but we don't really get a lot of feedback because they either people like Nico who can fix their own problems, or people who just use that in the Ramafas and update it once every 6 months, like the toolchain group or the kernel CI people. So we don't get a lot of feedback internally. It would be nice to get more feedback and see what we can be working on, like Victor wants p-test, so we could work on that if someone says, yeah, you can spend resources on that.
But not fixing them actually, I think it's not excuse actually, in my opinion, it's just to have the test. In some sense, even like take my example, libxml, version progresses. So even like when actually I need to make this decision which one actually to use, if I have actually results that's saying, okay, libxml, whatever, like 2.5 was so many failures. Then actually if OpenEmbedded moves to the next one, 2.6, it's kind of got actually kind of completely out of hand. 2.7, oh, they done actually a good job. So obviously actually I'm not kind of like libxml kind of developer, so I kind of like have a utilitarian actually kind of approach in this actual case, but even like idea kind of what's going on between the version, it would be in my opinion actually kind of helpful, and then after all maybe people can go and actually some of them pick up and fix.
So what would help with that if we have some better rules in OE for update? For example, people are starting to use build history more, so when they do an update they say build history diff shows these changes, and it would be nice if we can strongly encourage people to run something like p-test as well when they update versions, because a lot of version updates, even in OE core, they just break everything, but the Pokey auto builder is green, so it goes in. And so I think we need better maintainers for the layers. I think that is the actual solution to the problem.
You're talking about Linaro layers, so actually the OpenEmbedded
all layers.
All layers.
But for Linaro, we only have a really small subset in it. It's the tool chain, which we maintain. So if someone reports breakage, we fix it because that's what we do. And for the rest, there are only a handful of recipes in there. So And even for our Linaro layer, we can do a lot of better testing, because basically what we do, we update the version and then wait for it to break instead of update, test, commit.
Do you know what's going on the Pocket side? I think they claim or claimed in the past actually that they do some testing.
Yeah.
Is it any truth in that?
And the sky's green. A lot of the tests that are being done are basically build tests and don't say a lot. There were patches to fix multilib, and they basically moved something from lib to lib64 or whatever. But that file needed actually to be there, so it broke at runtime. But it passed the auto builder and the patch went in. No, that's no, that's not a toolchain, but it was a different package where the files needed to be in /lib something, and they just moved it without realizing what they did. I can make a good case for why the toolchain moved. It was annoying, but you can make a case why it moved, and it worked in a new situation. But
well, we
that
changed what we used to build the toolchain.
Yeah.
And so actually we were building it wrong before, and then when we built it right, it caused problems. Now it's back to the previous behavior. But
Yeah. So that the background was the Linaro binary toolchain changed its internal layout, which all our scripts in OE hate, because we pull the toolchain apart, extract versions, and things like that. Yes, it's really ugly. But people like it. They get a warm, fuzzy feeling using our binary toolchains.
And that's why somebody patched for it, because I figured it was part of that problem.
Yeah, and we got patches from, I think, both Freescale and TI to fix the leftovers.
Yeah, although I thought the TI patch was in a different range than NAS, but hopefully it's working.
Yeah, yes.
Now it's flat, because user lib64 are all the same place now, it just works.
Yes, and talking about patches, some of the time we see a sudden influx of patches from member companies, which is nice. And it would be better if it happened more, but then again, most of the patches are something broke, here's a fix. So on the other hand, if we don't see them, that means we didn't break anything. So we covered a bit of Nico's requirements and Victor's requirements. So Matt, do you have any input?
So we've just started releasing recipes. For those who don't know me, I work with the Mali ecosystem team, and we've just started pushing out Mali recipes to enable Mali on select platforms, integrating the binary blob and everything else. So those questions aside about proprietary, that's a different conversation. I'm working on it, okay? I suppose the interesting thing for us being noobs at this was that we didn't get it right the first time. And there wasn't really a huge amount of support or even best practices that we could come across. So we've got a good team in the ecosystem that were creating the recipes. It would be useful if there was some kind of a guide, a best practices. This is how you should do stuff. This is how you should upgrade, the things that you need to go through, the testing, the QA processes that we ought to do, because we want to make sure that the layers that we are producing are good, because we want people to use them in as wide a variety of use cases as possible. So we're not interested in releasing a distro. We don't care what you do. We just want to enable that one piece of IP. So best practices from our perspective.
Well, since having dealt with that exact layer, it's when someone gives you advice, listen to them. And for example, you encode an ARM instruction setting. So your package architecture ends up as Cortex A9 revision, blah, 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 blah. That's a pain in the ass. And the guy I was talking to was like, yes, but it's more optimized. It's more optimized. I'm like, if you look at the GCC code, it's the same case statement. So it's not more optimized. And he was like, no, we're going to keep it because it's more optimized. And I was like, you're doing it wrong. And it's not even more optimized. So try to avoid falling in a trap like, oh, we have a gazillion tune files in OE. Let's select one. Like, no, just keep it architecture independent so you end up with ARM v7A or ARM v7A HF and not Cortex A9, whatever, because that scares away people who aren't using Cortex A9 with a Mali.
Yeah, I suppose the problem we have is that actually the number of platforms that we've validated this works on is incredibly small. So we have no guarantee that if you take it on any other platform that it's actually going to work. So the guy was sat there with one, boy, it was probably an Odroid on his desk, and he got it to work on that. And that's what got submitted. The other thing I will say in their defense is that doing stuff with open source from within ARM is quite painful.
That's why you have Linaro.
That's why we have Linaro. But it's the BSP team within ARM that's trying to support this. So when the suggestions for improvement come through, the majority of them, at one point, okay, I'll take that back to the guys. But it will take us 3 months to get the patches out the door again, which is it's just stupidly painful.
Yeah.
So we made another release, our second release, I think, on Friday, 6 months after the first release. And we've had it internally for months. It just takes that long for us to get the whole, even if it's just the build recipes, is stupid. But that's the world that I live in at the moment. There's not really much that I can do to change that without changing the whole legal setup of ARM. And I'm only one guy, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, one of the other issues, what you said, that there are no best practices. A lot of the tools being written to make things easier. There was, a layer creation tool. And if you ran it, the third question was, which graphics card do you use? Do you use the internal Intel graphics, or NVIDIA, or something else? And then all kind of Intel-specific questions, because it was written by Intel. It's like, it's nice that they're trying, but it will end up being an Intel-specific thing. And using YOCTO project technologies maybe not in the right place. So for example, if you want to build a kernel, they will say use Linux YOCTO custom. Like, that might be a bit over the top for what you're trying to do.
So what kind of issues, I mean, what kind of help do you need? I mean, so I wasn't, so you basically, so you are trying to integrate some proprietary binaries into a layer. So that's what you are trying to do? I was not aware. Okay. So there, I mean, I don't know if it's done well or not, but in one of the Linaro groups in LHG, they might be, I mean, they are doing exactly that for some other platforms. I mean, the STM and maybe some other platforms where they do exactly what you are trying to do with Mali, but for IMG and for other stuff. So maybe what you need to do is, I'm not claiming that what they've done is right, but at least they've done through the same thing as you've. So maybe you want to talk to them and see what they've done, or I mean, I don't know if this stuff is public, all the LHG layers.
I think it isn't.
It isn't. Yeah, but basically, I mean, I just want to say that there are other people inside Linaro that try to address the same problem. So maybe, I mean, maybe even if you cannot see the layers, you can actually talk to them. So we can do something later.
And it would be nice if the end result is that maybe their layers get published as well, but if they aren't, that you can take their advice and integrate it in your layer, because your layer is front and center on GitHub, so it's easily visible. So it would be nice if we can point people to, like, if you want to integrate Mali, you can use this layer as is or as a base, maybe even for non-Mali stuff, because
TI might have also recipes for
yes.
public recipes for everything about the IMG stuff.
Yeah.
And there is definitely for the bigger, but also from the other side and the other.
Yeah, and what the TI layer also does is they say we have binaries, and they are hard float only. So if you try to build it, you get a message saying these binaries are hard float only. They do that with a magic Python bit. It's not really selective because it will always give you that message, but that's something to keep in mind, because the Freescale layer doesn't do that. As soon as you include the Freescale layer and you build for a Freescale machine, suddenly your distribution is using a different ABI, which is why I hate the Freescale layer, because we have to have magic Python to unbreak it. So those are the things that if you integrate binaries, you need to pay attention to. But it, like you said, it's not written anywhere, and we aren't getting anywhere trying to make an official document on it because Freescale is pushing back because they don't want to have their certification yanked.
Okay. Well, I agree with what you said to start off with. It would be really useful to have, again, the distro-free but use case driven. I just want to get Wayland up and running. So the next version of the recipes that we release are going to be based around our R7 driver, which has Wayland support built in. But we don't know how to enable Wayland in OE. And, you know, we will get it wrong. I guarantee it. You know, but is there a community out there that's looking at this? Should it be Linaro that are doing it? Where do we look for help here?
So if you just take OpenEmbedded, I mean, everything is there in OpenEmbedded. I mean, OE core, I mean, you can do it. What's missing is the final, I mean, you need basically distro settings, you need to put together the image. So you need a wiki that explains you how to do it. It's not difficult to get Wayland, at least the basic stuff. It's easier to get Wayland than Qt5. But so the thing we discussed with Koen before that is we want at least to make sure the people who use the meta Linaro layers, I mean, it's easy for these people. So what I have in mind is that we have this manifest. So you just clone the Linaro manifest that gives you OE core, bitbake, I mean, all the stuff you need. And then you bitbake the Linaro reference image for Wayland. Okay, and we do everything in that image, so that should be all you need to run Wayland. And same thing for Qt5. If we can agree today that this is what we are going to do, I mean, that's what I'm actually, I mean, this week we are going to meet with Qualcomm to this is probably what we are going to decide that we need for Qualcomm. So I can go and do it for Qualcomm, or I can actually go and do it with you on Meta, and that would just benefit everybody else,
Right.
which probably is much better. So that's what we need. We need something as simple as repo init, meta Linaro manifest or Linaro manifest, and then bitbake Wayland, Western actually, bitbake Qt5 or bitbake something. That's what we need. If we get that at least for all the 96 board that we have and all the hardware that come from any of the Linaro member, that's good. I mean, if we can generalize that outside of meta Linaro into OE core or something, maybe. But OE core is not a distro, so that's going to be difficult to make it easy for OE core to do that.
So what we did for Angstrom, we recently switched to repo as well, and in our script we have a small dialog front end which scans the layers for a machine. So you get a nice dialog thing, select your machine, which now lists 300 machines. So we need to fix that. We could do something for Linaro as well, that you pick your machine and pick your image and then go in an easier mode. And for Linaro and OpenEmbedded in general, what we're missing is what you say, use case driven examples, more product focused things like I want to do something on a device, how can I use OE to do it? So for example, Wayland and Qt5, I don't think there's anything saying like, oh, I want to have that, here are the steps you should follow. And someone should figure that out, because using OE in a product, it's not something the YOCTO project people or the OE core people are really interested in. And that's a shame, because that's where OE shines at, because we did that for the BeagleBone, and what we're doing for Debian now for the high key, we could easily have done it in OE as well, but it's all mostly outside of OE in your own layer. It would be nice if we, as Linaro, could set an example for the OE community as large to document use case driven things.
Yeah, that was my request.
So I suppose at this point, I'm not interested hugely in product, because I tend to be dealing with people who are evaluating, and it's a matter of getting these people to the point of putting their magic sauce on the top of the base platform. And I looked at OE to solve me the problems of getting to a hardware accelerated Wayland would be ideal, and then they're responsible for everything they build on top of that. So
Right.
I agree, it's Wayland, it's Qt, it's X11, it's the things that they need as the base platform. So again, no distro, nothing there. I just want to have something that runs, because they'll make the evaluation based on how the platform performs, and they can knock together whatever they need to in order to prove the performance points they need to, and then they can make a decision about how they go to product. But it's that first step of like, there's this complicated ARM-based SoC that has all sorts of different stuff in, and it would take me months to get an engineering group to bring all of that stuff up. I need something that solves that problem for me.
Right, but one of the issues with Qt, and to a lesser extent Wayland, is its libraries, and you need something to test it. Wayland has Western. I don't know if Qt5 has a simple demo that you can include just to test things. Otherwise, you have an image with Qt5 and Wayland,
Yeah.
but nothing that can actually put something on the screen to show it off.
There are Qt5 samples.
Okay, good.
Good start.
I mean, I would like to see from an ARMS perspective, when we have a whole stack of SDK stuff as well, it would be nice to see that sit on top of an OE layer as well. So we don't have to say, go over here, download Debian, whatever, pull a driver down from over here, run these scripts and do this special bit of magic. And then if everything goes really, really well for you, then compile this code and then copy it onto, and then run it. And you might get Hello Triangle if you're lucky. You just want to get past that point.
Right. That should be possible.
Yeah.
We do that. I mean, that exactly what we have with the Qualcomm boards. I mean, so today, it's very basic, like 5 lines of instructions, and that gives you exactly that.
So, are you still on the board or level steering committee of YOCTO?
No, I stepped down a few months ago. The election for the new people is currently started this morning. I already voted.
But you probably actually up to date anyway. So my question is more general. Actually, last like half a year or year, what kind of big thing happened in OpenEmbedded in general? What people thinking about? What problem they're solving? Maybe what new thing coming? So any like general update?
OE has been a bit boring, the good kind of boring lately. There aren't many innovative things happening. It's just gradually improving. So a lot of work has been done into integrating the Tizen image generator to make it easier to generate disk images and things like that. Paul Eggleton has been looking at build history again to have better reporting, things like that. So if you are all attending ELCE in Dublin, what is it, in 2 weeks from now? I have a presentation called OE, what would it look like if it would start from scratch, which highlights a lot of the issues people are having. So that might be interesting to attend as well. But for the rest, the OE just keeps on going on. It would be nice if we had something exciting, but it's...
Sometimes exciting means nasty bugs.
Yes.
I hear you. It's you doing fundamental. I believe actually the job is very well done at this point. But I thought actually kind of how it actually progressed further. I would be sound as a broken record actually, but I believe being the testing actually that would be one next big thing that it can be done by OpenEmbedded.
One of the problems that the technical steering committee has been discussing is that we don't have any maintainers in OE core. And that has different historical reasons, but the biggest reason is that the people who want to maintain something don't trust the people with commit access to OE core. They say, well, we can take over maintenance on this area, but we will just know that during a freeze, there will be a patch, the maintainer rejects it, but it will get applied anyway. And no one wants to make a hard guarantee that that doesn't happen. So there are a lot of people saying that we want to take over maintainership of this area, but only if we get to be actual maintainers. And then that's a hard issue to solve. You can't solve that technically because it's a trust issue. And another problem is that it's just too easy to create your own layer. So you can say, I can submit my fix to OE core or have my own layer with the recipes overlaid and conflict. So it's just too easy to go your own way.
That's the whole idea of the layering, right? So it sort of backfires, but
That's one of the...
People need to be educated in the cost of doing that in the long run. So it's supposed to be kind of the way I describe actually the layer number of patches should be oscillating function, right? So you can put it more to make the thing actually work quickly, but then actually you need to work on the getting rid of them.
Okay, so for Metal Linaro, we kind of have this motion as well. So this morning we went up, but the patch is already queued upstream, so it will go down again. But yeah. So Fatih, who wants to have the microphone?
Yeah, there's some toolings about the layers where you can see all the layers, list of recipes, and so on. I mean, it's a feature where we want to be able to let people just create their own layer, and it's very flexible. And shouldn't we have some kind of quality check saying, okay, there's this bunch of recipe doing the same thing, and it's kind of trigger a warning and say to the maintainer, okay, your recipe exists somewhere else. Please take a look if you can just merge it or avoid to duplicate.
Yeah, so there's now the OpenEmbedded layer index. That's layers.openembedded.org, where you can browse the layers and the content, and you can view the maintainer. So if you say, oh, I need libxml2, you type in libxml2, and it shows, oh, there is one version in OE core, there's one version in Metal Linaro, and etc. And that makes it easier to see if there was already a layer with the recipes. And Paul plans to have a next step indeed to be able to show conflicts, that when people submit their layer, that it can compare like, oh, you have conflicting versions of things. But yeah, like I said, there are no real rules. The only rules that there are the YOCTO project compatible certifications, and those rules aren't really public. So it would be nice if everyone submitted the layer to be YOCTO project compatible, but for example, silently changing the ABI is not in those checks. So it's a bit of a mixed blessing. And that goes back to there is no best practices because no one can agree on them.
So one of the things that within Linaro, do you have like, a central place or one place where every team can kind of put together your know-how for how you use OpenEmbedded within Linaro?
In theory, that would be build some baselines. But I hear, like I said, I don't hear a lot from the people in Linaro using OpenEmbedded, except when I step into the Connect here. So maybe Fatih has more experience with that.
Yes, central place seems to be us, and we maintain the Metal Linaro, some kind of general purpose layer for our use case. But yeah, maybe something that we need to address is some of the people are using OpenEmbedded, like the LHJ and related to the work done on RDK. And these guys, for example, they are just doing their stuff on their side to address their use case. So that's the issue that we need to resolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think a central location of that sort can help everybody. It can help everybody, and if you have a place where, like layers question went in, and there could be like simple FAQ of some sort, which is general OpenEmbedded use, not specific, but specifically to how somebody would use it within your infrastructure.
Yeah, that's something that we can do, definitely.
We could maybe start by having some kind of training or meeting with the teams that we plan, say, an hour, and then that beforehand we review their layers or code, and then during the training we can say, oh, well, you should be doing it slightly differently because you will run into these and these problems, and if you do it this, it will be better. That might be a good way to kill all those birds with one stone. To raise the profiles, like we at Build Some Baselines are the open embedded experts, come to us with questions, and even if you try something and you're not sure, also come to us, please.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that will be helpful because, for example, LHG is coming up with a layer now called Meta LHG, right? So then they will put it on, git.linaro.org somewhere. So it'll be good that if it is done in a way that is similar to Meta Linaro in general, or even better if it is part of Meta Linaro, but that doesn't matter as much. But if the quality-wise and general understanding of the layer is similar, then it helps to the end user.
Yes, but that implies that people care about the quality of the layer, because I've been working on Love OS and they don't care about the quality of the layer, they just care that their init ramfs works.
Yeah, I think that's subjective, but but it does happen. I think it depends upon every layer has its own community that is backing it up.
Right, a lot of it is opinion, but when you start patching things in sysroot, that messes up shared state, so that your build isn't reproducible anymore.
Right.
So you should care about that, but even that is met with, what are you talking about? It works. Go away.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, those kind of issues, at least, I mean, I look at from, if that kind of stuff is to be consumed within Linaro, then you could act as a buffer.
Yes.
And then make it more presentable, and maybe that same thing could be used downstream, who is then using, or is using Linaro services, then they can also benefit from that kind of work or value you will provide. So
Exactly.
I see that as a very positive thing. Upstream sometimes stinks for many layers, and that's, you really can't help it.
Right, and then most layers there aren't too bad. There's most like stylistic issues, but some layers are just completely broken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, broken, they violate basically everything that you shouldn't be doing, and that's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
especially if the maintainers aren't really OE people.
Yeah, that is understood.
So for all the issues we mentioned in your Mali layer, those are basically slightly more than stylistic issues, but there are layers which are way worse. Yes.
Question, is there any way of verifying sort of quality of the layers, or looking for those mistakes in programmable way, not just kind of human actually review actual way? Because that's one of the next thing actually that can be.
In theory,
because some of, just to explain, some of those actual, documentation, kind of like from my years of experience working with OpenEmbedded, it's a lot of kind of heuristics that they do actually job actually very well, but like to find particular variable and setting and just like understand the right way actually to do certain things, quite often actually it's non-trivial exercise, right?
Yeah.
And those mistakes that you're talking about, actually, I don't think actually they're sort of like intentional. The people just kind of reach their goal, and as much as they understood kind of how to do that.
The tools are there. For example, you could use Swabber. Swabber is what is it? LD preload, or you load it into pseudo, and it catches the syscalls. And for example, if it tries to look in /user/include, it will catch that. You could use that to spot changes to sysroots as well. But one of the issues with Swabber is that nobody seems to be using it. I tried to use it and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. So, yeah.
This one, you're talking about poisoning from the host, basically.
Yeah, that's what Swabber is for.
GCC patches.
Yes, there were GCC patches for that, but Swabber took that to another level. It looked at the syscalls.
Yeah, it looked at right at the syscall, so you could get everything. Compiler only takes the C files he's compiling.
Running binaries from outside the sysroot, things like that.
Yeah.
I was doing similar thing by just running OpenEmbedded
So to answer your question, I think one of the things you could rely on is the bit by QA, but that only goes thus far, right? So you catch, it's like a catch game. So you found some issue and then you write a test, right? But it's not comprehensive. You can still find a very novel way of violating the basic principles of OE and nobody will notice it, like, you know,
Yes.
injecting modified files into sysroot after the fact, right? And that too, using the functionality of Bitwake by inserting a task. So you know what you will end up doing, oh, okay, now I need to do a task level QA, right? So you will catch that error, and then somebody will come with more creative way of doing it. So I think this is a never-ending problem in general.
Yes.
It's just that, it's not comprehensive, but best practices is the one way to avoid it, but they cannot be eliminated, I think. They will always exist. You have to work with the layers and work with, it depends on the developers as well, but QA and Swabber, as you mentioned, the tools, that can give you like a real feel of what's the level of the quality of the layer in general.
But you need to enable it and test it because you don't want to run with the tools enabled, because even build history adds minutes to the build time. And if you run everything on a Swabber, it will get slower again.
Oh, yeah. But I think as an initial look and feel of the layer, that might not be a bad option. But, once you have it in, and Swabber is not a thing you should use it for every build. It's probably waste of resources.
Right. But we should try to raise that at the next OE General Assembly, just to ask the OE community to see if we can do something about that and work together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's still building a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Do you want to get to the space, like the G-Stream community, with the good, the bad, and the ugly, in terms of a QA process?
Right.
That might work, but the YOCTO project is too political for that. That might actually be good, that you can just say these layers are good and safe to include, these have a few issues and stay away from these, but the only stick we have is the YOCTO project compatible, and that doesn't even cover everything. And while that is supposed to be a technical issue, it goes by a vote in the advisory board. And some things have been rubber stamped. So it would be nice if we could use the carrot, but I think we need a better stick.
Yeah, I think tools are not there. Essentially, that's the basic problem. I propose a layer. You need to have somebody physically look at everything in there, and that's just not scalable, right? So there should be some tooling available. I propose a layer with 50 recipes. Now, I should have a automatic way of gauging it, what it all has in it, right? Instead of somebody sitting there for days and looking at each recipe and saying, "What you missed this, that, this." So I think that is what the QA could do. So there are several QA errors that are being added, and most of the time they do catch several common problems that recipes might have. So overall, the quality of layers have gone up in general, but it's not that every layer is with same level, because many times they write a layer for an older release and then they just leave it there, and then they just don't move forward, right? So you end up, then you want something from that layer, but you're on a later version of the release, then you have a problem because those recipes don't work one-to-one.
And then some things are hard to test. For example, the LUVOs, it's for testing your firmware. So you need a computer with that specific firmware to test. So
Correct.
if you're on PowerPC or MIPS, you don't care.
You don't care, yeah. Obviously, yeah.
Well, that's the example we had, was that we had a board that we would develop, and the feedback was coming back that you need to be more agnostic, but actually all we cared about was that one board.
Right. And a lot of things that help for creating layers is writing a good README. Start with what does this layer need, or start with what is this layer supposed to do, what does this layer require, and then your testing methodology or preferred image. That helps a lot. Sometimes layers don't have a README, and sometimes layers have a README where they explain how things are being tested and then what you need to do to get patches accepted. And that is awesome, but they're in the minority. So if you say in our README, we try to be platform agnostic, but we have only one platform to test on. So if you spot something wrong, patches accepted, that's okay, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm still working on the patches accepted, but
Yeah. But it's on GitHub, so it's open source.
you can fork it, do it, whatever you like with it.
Yeah.
It may be a cold day in hell before we can accept the patch.
So we covered almost the seats. Does any of the other people in the room want to ask questions or raise issues? And oh, we're over time already. So thank you for your attendance and thank you for your input. And see you in 6 months.